riding on the road again. Oh, you know we're riding on the road again. We're riding to Yellowstone Park. Cody, we're going to Yellowstone National Park today to see the wolf doggies. Oh! The wolf doggies. Yellowstone. Saying goodbye to Cody was one of the hardest things I have ever done. In 2013, I was just moving back to California after 3 years of moving around the country in the United States Marine Corps. I finally got stationed back home at Camp Pendleton, and I decided I wanted to get a dog. I searched the internet for dog breeds and decided a husky would be a perfect fit for my active lifestyle. One day I stumbled upon a blurry picture of a husky on Craigslist, and the owners were only 45 minutes away in Cajon. The description said they were a military couple and they accidentally moved into an apartment complex where they didn't allow huskies. You know, the whole dog breed thing. So I decided to make the drive to El Cajon to see if this dog was a good fit for me. When I arrived, I was greeted by a 20-year-old blonde girl who brought me into her house where I saw Apollo for the first time. That was the dog's name. He was chasing a cat around the apartment, and when I first saw him, I immediately knew this was going to be my dog. The first thing I remember when I first approached him was that he was shedding like crazy, and he had a scar on top of his nose that ran from one side of the top of his nose to the other in a perfectly symmetric pattern. He was perfect. I paid the owner $500 and off we went. On the drive home, I decided on a new name for Apollo. He was now Cody. Cody. Stoked. Thank you. Well, that first month was interesting. Cody was adjusting to the new environment, and every time I left him alone, I would come back to a new mess. Sometimes it would be a chewed up pillow, and other times it would be you-know-what strewn across the floor in the living room. He was still getting used to the place, and it wasn't his home yet. But luckily that stopped after a month, so he finally got comfortable. Unfortunately, after a few months with Cody, I found out I was getting deployed to Afghanistan, so I needed to find someone to take him in for a while I was gone. I really didn't want to leave him for a long period of time, but I didn't have a choice. Luckily, I found a great family that agreed to watch him while I was gone, and they had 2 dogs and a yard for him to play in. When I returned from deployment, I wasn't sure how Cody was going to respond when I picked him up. Well, I was pleasantly surprised when he gave me the best welcome home response by jumping up on me and howling like a crazy person. He was so happy to see me, and I was too. For the next 10 years, Cody and I were best friends. He came everywhere with me, from long runs by the beach to road trips to the mountains and around town where everyone knew me by my dog. Cody was never that great with other dogs, and although I would take him to the dog park on a regular basis, I would always have to watch him so that he didn't get into a scuffle with another dog. Usually it was with a larger breed. For the most part, he was good, but once in a while he would get irritated and decided to turn on the other dog and let him know. He also had this weird thing where he would get defensive when an older man, usually over 60, would approach him to pet him. I realized that he had been mistreated at some point in his first 5 years by an older man. I suspected he had been abused by a previous owner, but I couldn't pinpoint it because I knew he had been through a handful of owners before he came to his forever home with me. I guess this is kind of typical when it comes to a rescue dog. Cody was a very loyal dog, but he was never a cuddly dog that most people have. I had to earn his respect and his love, and when we were around other people, he would allow them to pet him, but he never really liked a lot of attention. He was an interesting dog, but he was mine. In the last year of his life, he started to decline drastically. It all started with his back legs starting to go out on him. He seemed to be walking with a limp, and when I took him to the vet, they told me he was starting to get arthritis in his back legs, and that was very common for older dogs. From the previous paperwork I had on him from the pound where the previous owners found him, they said he was 5 years old, which would make him around 15 at this point. He had definitely lived a long life, so it was not surprising things were starting to go downhill. I knew that Cody only had a short period of time to live, so I decided to take him on a long road trip up the coast on an RV trip. I figured this would be a fun way to finish off his long life, and he would appreciate seeing all the new sights and sounds. I had him on a good diet, but I could tell his age was catching up to him. He had so much fun. When we returned home after a couple months, Cody was having a hard time even standing up, and he could no longer walk around for more than a minute or two without his back legs going out on him. He began to walk into corners and forget where he was. He would just stand there, looking at the wall, and I would have to get his attention so that he would come back to reality. When we were outside, he would end up trapped in the bushes or next to the shed, where he didn't seem to know where he was anymore. It was really hard to see, but I knew this was just the signs of the end approaching. A couple months later, Cody passed away at 16 years old. I'm making this video 6 months later because it's taken me some time to process everything. One thing I do know is that Cody had a great life, and I am so thankful he came into my life when he did. I am forever grateful for the blessing of having him for the time I did. Aren't dogs the best?